Okay, I'm gonna do a little short vid. A lot of this stuff has been done already. Um, it's pretty basic stuff, to be quite honest. I mean, because obviously I've looked over YouTube and it's freaking everywhere. But my goal for this mill was basically to, that's spindle light there. Basically, to have a mill that would serve basically a dual purpose, I guess, if you will. I'm really been trying hard to try to perfect what I've got going on. I've got a ton of work, side work. I have a day job, but I have side work that I do to kind of help feed my projects, I guess. But my tool library is my goal right now. What I'm doing here, I'm taking a poor man's approach. The thought process is like a Tormach, but in my head, I mean, I know the limitations on this deal. What these are basically, CNC. They're Chinese CNC router attachments. They have an 8mm ID for the shaft if you were to upgrade your spindle. But these are all ER16. I was wanting to keep it all ER16, and the reason being was when I first started this, the outer diameter of this was 3/4. So my goal was to have, and is going to be, I'm going to have an air operated drawbar. I have conical washers up there, but I have one 3/4 collet. So the thinking is that all my tooling will have one hookup. It's 3/4. So depending on where I put that air knob or whatever I end up with, that will hit the drawbar. And there's tons of videos on YouTube. I've watched several, so I'm not doing anything that nobody hasn't already done. One thing that I've noticed, that what I'm going to do here is, this thing is eventually going to be full CNC. But through the whole process, I've noticed that what I wanted to do was a CNC / manual mill. Well, as of a couple weeks ago, I've been kind of bebopping around on Mach 3 and realized that there's this wizard, and it's the power feed. Well, that's essentially what I was trying to keep, is the power feed. Well, as you know, that for what I'm wanting to do, that absolutely serves zero purpose for me right now. So that being said, I've still got lead screws in it right now. I'm going to go ahead and make all my mounting brackets for my motors. I've got, I think they're NEMA 23s on it right now, but they're like a 420 ounce motor, but there's plenty of power. I was curious, but I just kind of half-ass mounted this one here. and did the calibration on the software, steps per inch, and dialed in my backlash because there's 27 thousandths backlash on this X lead screw, which is a little ridiculous. But when you're doing a manual deal, it's not a big deal. But if you get into the CNC thing, obviously you want repeatability. So my hopes was to be able to retain manual operation as well as CNC. But after finding this wizard, I mean, that pretty much solves all my problems. So they're not problems, but my needs, I guess. Down here, that's the coolant reservoir. This thing is going to have it'll have a surround. And then I did on my router over there, it's got, main light, spindle light. I'm eventually going to have a spindle light. This was I got an air solenoid over here that I'm eventually going to plumb in so I can turn the air on instead of manually. I mean, it's really no big deal. I mean, you can come over here and turn the air on this way. It's really no big thing. So it's just kind of what I'm after as far as the machine's concerned. A lot of people don't like doing the round column conversions. For me, I think this is going to be a neat deal. It's got 5 inches Z travel when you're in locked in round column. But say I put a 12-inch piece of material on here and I want to engrave or mill the top or whatever, I just raise this column and then know that I have 5 inches of travel here as far as the CNC is concerned. But problem with that on a round column, as most of you probably already know, is when you loosen your nut over there and raise your column up. This used to be a hand crank, and I've put a drill on here because I've watched several videos, and there's a guy on here that does a Rong Fu mill. It's basically a copycat of this one. His name is Cup of Joe, and that guy does some really, really neat stuff. So I kind of robbed his idea as far as a drill. I knew I used to have a power or an air ratchet on here, but that was just using more attachments, and I like the ease of operation and don't want to incorporate a lot of attachments. So this drill here, it's a 20 volt Black & Decker. It had enough torque to be able to, when I build that adapter, I pulled the hand crank off and built that adapter for it. It had enough torque to be able to raise and lower this column. But back to what I was going after is when you do that, what happens is if you're doing a CNC deal, then obviously you lose the work coordinates. So I watched that Cup of Joe, and he had done basically it harnesses right here and up here, and then it straddles and comes over here, and it's a round rod, basically a chrome rod, and then obviously you dial in, over the course of down here and down up here, you dial in that rod to where it's true and plumb to your column. So then you apply a linear bearing on that rod. So what when you raise and lower this, the thinking is that you won't lose the work coordinates down here. Now, hopefully a person would think later on that you would take that in consideration, but sometimes things change throughout the setup, and you might have work coordinates dialed in and you think, crap. So It's just basically taking poor man's tooling and trying to update it and make it work for you. Um, but I was real excited to see that this wizard allows me, oops, to take a, you know, it's pretty basic. I mean, you zero that out, but it allows you to, you have a feed of your negative based on your travel of whatever. I mean, this is no news. Mach 3 is fairly old, but the more I look at it and the more I deal with it, it's whoever designed it, I think it's just wow. I mean, you didn't hardly forget anything. So, you know, say it's I've got 24 inches of travel on this X table. So theoretically, if I'm in the middle, I'm at 0, right? So, and it's 24 inches of travel, but just in general, I figured you're at 0 and you got 10 inches that way, 10 inches that way. So what happens is you just set these parameters, and up here you can do increment and jog, which continuous and increment. But what I think was cool was I was trying to capture a manual operation mill along with a CNC. Well, I've realized over the course of finding this wizard that these handles and all this kind of stuff for what I'm looking to achieve really aren't necessary. So the next step is, after I get all my motors, permanently mounted and build all my shrouds and everything dialed in, then I'm going to go ahead and buy some ball screws, and then that way I don't have to deal with the backlash, because it looks to me like it really probably, with the tolerances that I deal with, probably won't have to be a big deal. But I guess it's just, being into what we're into, it kind of is kind of a neat deal. So, but it was kind of neat to me to be able to capture kind of, I guess, movement, if you will. So I'll wrap it at, took up the backlash, and but it's just temporary mount just to kind of see how things work. And I mean, I've got this little CNC router, and I learned a lot off that deal. I've got software set up and it's dedicated to that as well. But I've ran CNC machines at work, but it's hardline coded machines, doesn't use any kind of CAD or anything like that. So the thinking was I just kind of wanted more but I've just realized, even making this video, you have to, so here, we'll just do this. A lot of this stuff is, based on the computer, how how good the computer is. A lot of times the computer will glitch out, and stupid shit like the feed hold and stuff like that won't work. But since I'm on a minus, this here is going to have to be a negative 10. I've just realized that's why it wasn't working. So, wait, minus plus, see, feed x plus negative. So, and there you go. Didn't have that working before because it kept going the same direction. I'm like, what the heck's the deal? But I've had a few drinks tonight, so that's going to be my excuse. But after I figured out the power feed type deal, I mean, that to me is just cool shit. But I'm going to go ahead and plumb this in eventually. I'm still trying to incorporate the whole surface where this is at. And hopefully the drain back will be faster than the coolant pump. But obviously I've got the air. Used to be a mist, but the mist just makes a mess in the shop. Makes it cloudy, and I just don't like that. This is solid. This is solid, or not solid, nothing, but wet coolant. These are all the wires for steppers. Once I get all this established, it's going to be nice and neat. You won't hardly see probably anything. But, hey, look, feed hold. And it worked. So we're at -2.8. I mean, this wizard to me is just cool as heck. So I'm just kind of excited about that. That's kind of why I made this video, and I just realized it's 16 minutes long. So therefore, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. And now that I got all this, the power feed's coming off. I'm going on eBay. Several other things. Maybe these hand wheels too. I don't know yet. But just was excited about it. And there's my tool library again. Very small, but we're getting there. I want to incorporate a lot of the offsets and stuff, but nice little deal is the Tapmatic. I'll incorporate that in there too. So, thanks.